Part 2. When the Garden Spoke Back. A story of returning to yourself after awakening from toxic control. Storytime by T. Santoro. The language of quiet things. There are places in this world that speak, not with words, but with stillness. A garden is one of them. Not the neatly trimmed kind, manicured for show, but the kind that grows wild around the edges, where rosemary leans into basil like an old friend, where the swing creaks even when no one's on it, and where silence says more than sound. We continue our story with Soul, in a town called Silver Creek, the kind of place where stories unfold slowly and take root. From up the trail, he felt a soft vibration approaching, warm, unmistakable. She carried a sprig of peppermint in her pocket, and noticed Soul the way people ought to be noticed. Gently, without a plan. What follows is not a love story, at least not in the usual sense. It was something softer, something slower, a remembering of how to listen, to receive, to allow something beautiful to grow, without needing to hold it too tight. This is not a story about what love should look like. It's about how it feels when it finally feels safe. Aligned, steady, like a piano finely tuned. So come in, kick off your shoes. There's tea on the stove, and the garden's already speaking. All you have to do is listen. Chapter 1, Peppermint on the Wind. The peppermint had taken over the far corner of the garden. Soul had meant to keep it contained, but it had its own ideas. It spilled past the border stones, stretched toward the path, and laughed in the breeze like something wild and unbothered. He didn't mind. Every morning, the scent rode the wind, filled the porch, clung to his sleeves. It was the kind of fragrance that whispered, "The past is over. The future has not arrived. All that truly exists is now." The day was unremarkable in the best way. Blue sky, birds chirping, a cup of tea left on the porch rail. Soul stepped out for a walk, not searching for anything. That's when he saw her. Not loud. Not showy. Just real. There was nothing about her that tried to impress. A canvas bag slung over one shoulder. Garden clippers sticking out the top. A sprig of rosemary catching the light as she walked. She noticed Soul the way someone should be noticed. With presence. Not as a conquest. Not as a threat. "The peppermint?" she asked with a half smile. "I smelled it before I saw you." Soul returned the smile steady. Slow, from a place that finally felt ready again, a place he had never forgotten. "It's been wild this year," he said. "Doesn't stay where it's planted, but I've stopped trying to control it." That earned a nod. No approval, just understanding. Some things are better when they're free. She didn't rush the moment, didn't reach for Soul's story, didn't offer one of her own. She just walked beside him, step by step. No pressure. No performance. And for the first time in a long time, Soul didn't have to defend his presence. He was allowed to take up space, freely, fully, and without apology. And for Soul, he felt whole. Chapter 2. Something in the way she moves. The trail curved near the old footbridge, the one Soul had crossed so many times without thinking. But this time, he slowed. She matched his pace without comment, as if she understood without needing to ask. It was the first time in a long time someone had matched his rhythm instead of trying to steer it. They paused near the river's edge. The sun moved lazily across the surface. Dragonflies flickered in and out of view. "This is my favorite spot," Soul said softly. "It's quiet, but not silent. The kind of quiet that lets your mind breathe." She nodded. Not just politely, but with presence, like she felt it too. Then came that rare thing Soul hadn't realized he missed, a moment of connection that didn't rush in to fill the silence. She sat on the bench nearby, not asking for an invitation. Not assuming, just existing, peacefully, nearby. Soul sat too. They didn't speak right away. She watched the water. He watched the way her shoulders rose and fell as she breathed. Steady, not guarded. There was nothing performative in her energy. No hunger to be impressive. No push to be read. People don't usually come this far down the trail, he said. Most stop at the overlook and turn back. She looked toward the river. I don't mind the extra walk, she said. It's usually where the best things are. Quiet things. Things most people miss. Soul felt it then. Not attraction, but ease. Something rare. Something he hadn't been looking for. Do you live nearby? He asked. She smiled gently. I just moved in not long ago. A little place down near the wildflower field. I know it, Soul said. The one with the crooked fence and the grapevines taking over the back. That's the one, she laughed. The vines have a mind of their own. He laughed too. Not because it was funny, but because it felt real. The breeze shifted, lifting the scent of peppermint. A pair of birds darted low across the water, chasing nothing urgent. She reached into her canvas bag and pulled out a small bundle of herbs tied with twine. Rosemary, lavender, and something Soul couldn't place. You grow those? He asked. Some. Some I trade with neighbors. People leave things on the porch rail. I leave something back. No rules. Soul smiled. That's a good kind of exchange. It is, she said, uncomplicated. The way she said it held something real. Not dramatic, just clear. Soul recognized it. That quiet honesty in someone. I've got too much peppermint this year, he offered. The kind that's trying to grow sideways off the fence. Her face lit up. Not out of excitement, but appreciation. I'd take some. Trade you for lemon balm. Deal. The moment was sealed, not with a handshake, but a shared silence that felt whole. Eventually, the sun began its descent, and the trail took on that golden hue Soul loved. The hour when things don't quite belong to the day or the night. She stood, brushing off her hands. I'm this way, she said, nodding toward the curve that led toward the wildflower field. And I'm that way, Soul replied, gesturing back toward his garden. They didn't linger awkwardly. No fishing for phone numbers. No promises. Just a parting smile. Thanks for the bench, she said. Thanks for the quiet, he replied. Soul watched her walk until she rounded the bend and disappeared from view. No echo of old voices followed. No panic. No push. Just peppermint in the air and something calm in his chest. Not excitement. Not infatuation. Just readiness. Chapter 3. A Bundle on the Rail. It was the next morning. Warm sunlight fell across the kitchen counter, casting soft lines across Soul's journal. The garden outside had already begun to hum. Bees weaving through lavender, peppermint swaying at the edge like a wild thought. Soul opened the door to let the air in. And there, sitting quietly on the porch rail, was a small bundle of lemon balm wrapped in twine. No note. No explanation. Just the herb. Bright, fresh, and unmistakably left with care. Soul smiled. The kind of smile that started in the chest before it reached the lips. She meant it. He took the bundle inside, placing it gently beside the sink. The fragrance lifted. Clean, citrusy, calming. He thought about brewing tea, but instead he stepped out barefoot into the garden. The day didn't need anything added to it. Later that afternoon, while tending the overgrown peppermint he'd promised her, Soul clipped a few generous sprigs and tied them with linen cord. Not too tightly. Just enough to say, "This is for you." He didn't walk to her door. He didn't leave a note. He left the peppermint on her porch rail, a cup of tea beside it, offered in the same quiet way she had once offered hers, and walked away. There was no rush to speak. No expectation of what this was or where it was going. But something real had been exchanged. Not just herbs, but honesty. The kind that doesn't need words to say. I see you. I respect your peace. We're meeting in the middle, where it's balanced and steady. That evening, the peppermint was especially fragrant. Soul sat on the porch with a small cup of tea and no shoes. He watched the sky shift from blue to gold to violet and thought, this is what it feels like to let something grow, without needing to name it right away. Chapter 4: Meet in the Middle for Tea. She didn't knock. She didn't have to. Sol looked up from the garden just as she appeared, walking the trail with the same unhurried grace she'd had the first day. Canvas bag over her shoulder, bare arms catching the sunlight. A faint smile, like something sacred she kept just for herself. "I figured it was time I returned your cup," she said, holding it up like an offering. Sol hadn't expected her. He stood calm, present, with no expectations. "Come in," he said. "The water's just boiled." She stepped onto the porch and followed him inside. There was no awkwardness. No need to straighten the cushions or apologize for the lived-in feel. Sol's home was like his garden, honest, and cared for with a sense of ease. He placed the cup beside another and dropped a few peppermint leaves into the pot. "From the garden?" she asked. "This morning," he nodded. "It's gotten bold this year." Her words came easy. "Feels like the kind of season for it." She met his eyes. "You carry that." Bold, grounded, like something in you moves without resistance. Sol didn't respond right away. Just poured the water and let it steep. Some truths didn't need to be named to be known. They sat on the porch in the late morning light, tea warming their hands and the quiet between them. "Your place feels like you," she said. Calm, intentional, like a steady wave of peace. Sol looked out at the garden. The peppermint swayed in the breeze, as if agreeing. "It wasn't always like this," he said. "There was a time I filled silence because I couldn't sit with it. Now I don't want to fill it unless I mean it." She nodded, slowly. "Same." For a while they just sipped. No hurry. No reaching. No fear of what the other was thinking. Just tea. Just sun. Just presence. And that was enough. Chapter 5: Reflections. The tea was finished, but neither of them moved. The breeze had shifted slightly, cooler now, brushing across the porch like a question that didn't need answering. She leaned back in the chair, her hands resting loosely in her lap. "That peppermint," she said, nodding toward the garden. "It reminds me of my grandmother. She used to hang bundles from the rafters in the summer. Said it kept the ghosts out." Sol smiled. Mine said, "It kept the good spirits in." Maybe they were both right. They laughed. Not loud, but light, and something loosened. "She raised me," she added. "For a while, anyway. After things got messy with my mom, it wasn't said with drama. Just space. Just clarity." Sol didn't ask for more. Just a nod. The kind that says, "I hear you." "And you?" she asked, her tone soft and steady. "What brought you here?" Sol let his eyes follow the garden path before answering. "Truthfully, I left behind a version of myself that didn't know how to breathe without permission." He let the words settle. "Someone once told me I was hard to love," Sol said, voice low. "I believed it longer than I should have." She looked at him steady, calm. "You don't feel that way," she said. "There's something about you like love moves freely through you. No rules. No tension. Just open space." Sol smiled. "Thank you," he said. The wind moved through the garden again. It smelled like something remembered and something more. Something lighter. "Do you miss this person?" she asked. Sol considered that for a long moment. "I don't miss how they loved me," he said. "I just kept trying to be loved when love wasn't something being returned." That landed softly. Her fingers paused mid-motion, resting lightly on the table. "I know that feeling." They didn't linger on the pain. They didn't reach to rescue each other. They let the stories breathe, resting in the space between two cups, a garden, and the quiet understanding of two people who no longer let the past shape the present. Chapter 6: Tasha, is that you? The next morning, as the sunlight spilled across the garden in golden patches, like someone had broken open a jar of light energy and let it pour freely across the earth. Birds chattered in the distance, unbothered and delighted. Sol stood by the tea kettle, already warming, when he heard, Soft footsteps behind him and her gentle voice say, "Good morning," she said, gazing toward the sun. "You're up early." Soul handed her the first cup. "I enjoy watching the sunrise. The light rays feel like they're breathing down from the heavens, warming everything, like the kind of love that doesn't ask for anything in return." Tasha took the cup in both hands, breathing in the peppermint. "You talk like a monk and move like a gardener." He chuckled. "And you talk like a poet and move like the breeze." Her smile lingered, easy and real. "You know we've got a rhythm. Feels like we understand each other without trying." They did. The day unfolded without agenda. Tasha found an old basket and challenged Soul to a harvest duel who could gather the most tomatoes without bruising a single one. The winner would get the first taste of whatever they cooked together. "Tomatoes are sensitive," she said, seriously eyeing him. "They bruise just like hearts," Soul replied. "Then I'll carry them like a basket of eggs with care." "Oh, please," she laughed. "Last night you knocked over the olive oil mid-sentence." "That was dramatic punctuation," he grinned. They wandered barefoot through the garden rows, brushing past dill, thyme, and sun-warmed squash. Every now and then, their arms would touch. Nothing forced, just presence. Just proximity, and a peace that didn't ask for more. Tasha pointed to a stubborn weed near the carrots. "That one reminds me of an ex. The kind that keeps showing up where they're not wanted?" "Exactly, and chokes out the good stuff." "Let's make space," Soul said, as he bent down, pulling the weed out, roots and all. They ended up cooking barefoot in the little outdoor kitchen. Fresh tomato soup, herbed rice, and salted cucumbers with a hint of lemon balm. Tasha insisted on tasting everything with her fingers, claiming it gave her direct flavor intelligence. Soul laughed. "That's like a superpower." They danced between the stove and the garden, bumping hips, laughing, their fingers stained from tomato skins and the faintest trace of basil. Something moved in the air between them. Their lips met. The kiss was warm and unhurried, and in that kiss was the story, the quiet truth of what happens when two people let the light in. Slowly, they ate by the garden, plates balanced on their knees. Soul's dog lay nearby, belly up, tongue lolling, the very image of contentment. "This feels honest," she said, "like something that moves on its own without needing to be fixed." Soul reached for her hand, thumb brushing gently over her knuckles. "It's what happens when the soul recognizes presence, that quiet sense of home." And in the breeze that moved through the garden, there was no resistance. Only two souls enjoying the ease of something real. Chapter 7. A shift in the breeze. The evening arrived with a sense of stillness. Not silence, but a calm that felt alive. Even the garden seemed to be listening. Soul was in the shed, restocking. Stacking baskets, coiling hoses, moving slow. When he noticed Tasha hadn't said much since lunch. She'd been smiling, laughing, but something about her eyes was elsewhere. He let her be, but the silence grew roots. By twilight, Tasha had wandered down the trail that led to the old dock, where the garden met the edge of the river. She stood still, arms folded across her chest, gazing at the water. Soul approached slowly, his steps careful on the wooden planks. "You okay?" She breathed in slowly. "Yeah, just thinking." "That's usually where trouble starts," he said with a soft smile. Tasha didn't laugh this time. She pulled in a breath and let it out in a long, quiet stream. "You ever feel like something's too good? Like it can't be real unless it goes wrong?" Soul looked at the ground, then back at Tasha. "Yes, too many times." Their eyes met as Tasha softly said, "Part of me keeps waiting for something to change. I catch myself pulling back before anything even happens." Soul was quiet for a moment, letting her words sit. "Tasha," he said gently, "I'd rather have the truth than the performance." She turned to him, eyes glistening just a little. "I'm not scared. It's just unfamiliar ground. I've always had to be the strong one, or the one left behind." Soul stepped closer, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from her. "We don't have to be perfect," he said softly. We just enjoy each other. As we learn each other. Tasha looked at him, steady but quiet. But what if I hesitate? Then I'll wait, Soul said, his voice carrying a quiet kind of kindness. She looked at him again, as if hearing more in his tone than his words. You'd wait? He nodded once. Calm, certain. If it's real, there's no rush. Her shoulders softened. Not all the way, but enough to notice something in her was listening. You talk like you've done this before, she said, a hint of a smile in her voice. Not really, Soul replied. Not long ago, I believed love was something you could trust when it wasn't. He glanced at her, steady. But with you, it feels different. More genuine. No pressure, no expectations, just seeing where it goes. I like that. The words settled between them like petals on still water. As Tasha let Soul's words sink in, she stepped closer and pressed her forehead to his chest. No kiss. No grand reveal. Just 2 heartbeats, finding rhythm. I really want to see where this goes. I'm not trying to push you away, she said. Then don't, he replied. Just walk beside me. Soul wrapped his arms around her like sunlight wrapping around the earth. No rush, no pressure, just space to shine. The breeze shifted slightly. A few drops of rain tapped against the dock. Tasha looked up. It's starting. Thunder rolled low in the distance, the wind picking up as a soft flicker of lightning lit the sky. The rain, gentle at first, began to find its rhythm. Stay over tonight, Soul said, almost instinctively. Tasha gave him a slow look, her voice soft. No other place I'd rather be tonight, but with you. They fell asleep in each other's arms. Not with longing, but with presence. A sense of peace. Chapter 8. The Quiet Bloom. By morning, the rain had moved on, leaving the garden rinsed and renewed. Like the earth itself had taken a re-energizing bath during the night. Soul stirred first, blinking into the soft light filtering through the linen curtains. For a moment, he wasn't sure what had woken him. Then he felt it, her hand resting gently on his chest, her breath slow and steady against his shoulder. He didn't move, didn't dare. He just listened. To her breathing, to the birds starting their morning calls, to the quiet hum of something that didn't need words. A few minutes later, she mumbled. You're staring at me. Caught me, he said. You do know you drool a little when you're completely relaxed? I do not. You do, he said with a smile. It's actually kind of becoming. She opened one eye and gave him a playful shove. If you're going to tease me, at least bring me tea first. You stayed over and already making demands? Healthy boundaries. I require tea before being made fun of. Soul laughed and rolled out of bed, tossing on his hoodie. Peppermint? Always. By the time he returned with 2 steaming cups, Tasha had opened the windows. Letting the breeze in, she stood there, arms above her head, stretching in the sunlight like a sunflower coming to life. You smell like sleep and cedar, she said, taking her cup. You smell like dreams and sarcasm. Balance, she said, sipping her tea. It's what makes us work. The day unfolded without urgency. They cooked together again. This time, pancakes with wild blueberries from the edge of the property. Tasha accidentally dropped batter on Soul's shirt and tried to wipe it off with her hand, making it 10 times worse. You're full of surprises, he said. And charm, she added. They took turns washing dishes. He rinsed while she dried. When she paused to dance with the dish towel on her head, Soul joined in with an air guitar solo. Later, they wandered barefoot through the garden, taking their time with everything. While Tasha examined the squash, Soul lifted the vines, pointing out where new blossoms were forming. Every touch was gentle, every joke balanced. At one point, she looked at him, sunlight catching in her eyes, and said, You know what I love about this? He tilted his head. Tell me. I never feel like I have to entertain you. I can just be. He nodded. Same. It's like we're both on the same frequency. No static. They spent part of the afternoon reading under the fig tree Soul, with a book of meditations. Tasha with an old novel she found in his shed. At one point, without even looking up, she reached over and rested her foot on his lap. He didn't say anything. He just left it there. Connection doesn't always need movement. Sometimes stillness says more. As the sun began to lower and the sky turned that soft watercolor blue, Soul stood and offered his hand. "Walk with me?" Tasha slid her hand into his. "Anywhere." Chapter 9. The space between words. The morning drifted in like a warm breeze. Soul sat cross-legged on the porch, quietly working on the wind chime he'd started days ago. Cedar pieces smoothed by hand, holes drilled with care, every detail simple and intentional. Nearby, Tasha lay stretched on a woven blanket in the grass, sketching in her notebook. Vines curling into hearts, sunbursts behind the garden gate, whimsical herbs with faces. They didn't say much, but they didn't need to. Every now and then, their eyes met and exchanged something real. "I see you. I'm glad you're here." After a while, she rolled onto her side and said, "You ever notice how easy this feels?" Soul didn't look up. "You mean us?" She nodded. "I keep waiting for something to shift, for one of us to pull away or press too hard. But instead, it's just steady." "That's because neither of us is gripping it," Soul said without hesitation. "We're letting it unfold." Tasha smiled. "That's rare, you know, not trying to define everything. Just being present." They shared lunch beneath the fig tree. Cucumber salad and peppermint tea. They joked about making a tiny welcome mat for the frogs that nested near the watering can. Soul told her a story from childhood about getting caught talking to trees. She didn't laugh at him. She just said, "Of course you did." And that meant everything. Later in the day, they walked a wide loop through the trails. Tasha brushed her fingers along every low-hanging branch. Soul carried 2 oranges in his pocket, just in case. At a small clearing they sat and shared them in silence. Peelings curled like question marks on the ground beside them. Tasha was quiet, then asked, "What do you think makes love last?" Soul thought for a while. "I think it's when both people keep choosing to stay open. Not push, not pull. Just allow. And trust what shows up." Tasha leaned in slightly. "Allowing, that's the word, isn't it? Love that grows doesn't need pressure," Soul said. "It just needs space and sunlight." As the sun dipped lower, Tasha glanced toward the trail that led home. "I should go before dark." Soul didn't flinch, didn't try to convince her to stay. He simply stood, walked her to the edge of the path, and kissed her forehead. "Want me to walk you home?" She smiled. "No, I like walking alone sometimes." He stepped back, hands in his pockets. "You know the way, and I know where to find you." They lingered in the space between goodbye and stillness. Then she turned and walked, slowly, peacefully, down the path lined with vibrant marigolds and a lingering memory. Soul watched until she faded into the quiet, her presence blending gently into the distance. A trace of wildflowers drifted on the breeze. As Soul returned home, he picked up the unfinished wind chime, sanding each piece until it felt smooth, like a clear thought. No expectations, no rules, just the quiet freedom of stillness. Before you go, if this story whispered something familiar to you, maybe it's because it was never really about Soul and Tasha. It's about what happens when we stop forcing love to look a certain way, when we let it become what it truly is, when both people honor the present, without reaching into the future with clenched fists. This is a story about allowing, not chasing, about enjoying someone's presence without turning it into pressure, letting something good unfold naturally in its own rhythm, without needing to label it or lock it down. That's what trust looks like in its highest form. And sometimes, that's what love looks like too. See you in the stillness. If this story spoke to you, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and remember to click the bell so you always hear a new story. And if you know someone who could use this message, share it with them. Because sometimes, a simple story is all it takes to spark something real.